Hey, welcome to Real Talk. Thanks so much for hanging out with us again this week. Hey, as always, we would love to hear from you. We'd love for you to subscribe to our channel, and you can comment on any of our videos. And I want to tell you about something that we're starting kind of today. The next couple of weeks, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to take on some really difficult topics, right? We're going to talk about things like, anxiety and mental illness and depression and loneliness. And here's what we'd love. We would love to hear from you, your questions, your thoughts about this stuff, because in a number of weeks, we'd like to be able to take your questions and answer as many as we can here on Real Talk. So maybe a little bit different style of Real Talk over the next number of weeks, but again, we hope that you'll continue to join us, and please make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. So, Pastor Joe, I did this really dumb thing a couple weeks ago. I was at home, we were going through some stuff, it was on a weekend, and I had out our wedding album. We have a big, giant photo album. Yeah, old school, right? And so I'm looking at our wedding pictures, and I haven't looked at them in a while, but I'm looking at them, and it's fun to do that, to reminisce a little bit. But I was looking at one, and something in the background, I kind of wanted to see what it was, and so without even thinking, I'm so programmed, I started doing this with my fingers.
Apple zoomed?
Yeah, I zoomed in on an 8x10 photo.
Did it work?
You know, I tried a number of times and it didn't work.
Didn't work?
No, but the worst part is that my daughter was sitting next to me and she's like, "Dad, what are you doing?" I just had that moment of crud, somebody was watching.
Somebody's
Always watching, right? Have you done something dumb and you're just like, "Oh, the whole world just saw that."
Pretty much what we do in front of cameras all the time.
Well, that's true.
When I was a freshman in high school, running for class president, I get up to do a speech, I trip and fall in front of the entire class, and the place roars with laughter. It's like the most embarrassing thing that could ever happen to an awkward freshman. I'm so self-conscious about what I look like already, and then,
Did you nail the speech though?
No, I shut down completely and made a vow in that moment never to do any public speaking again.
How'd that work out?
It's not working very well. But yeah, everybody's always watching.
Someone's watching, right?
For sure.
So I found out that even when you're reading your Kindle, someone's watching. Amazon is watching.
Really?
Yeah, and they're tracking when we read what we're into, what we highlight, underline, that kind of stuff. And I read something really fascinating. They tracked the most highlighted Bible verse in the Bible on Kindle. And it happens that the most highlighted verse is Philippians 4, verses 6 and 7. Let me just read verse 6. It says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God." So the number one highlighted verse in the Bible, all over the country, as people are reading the Bible, is do not be anxious. It's about anxiety. What do you think about that?
And it doesn't surprise me, right? Because I think we both know our tendencies towards anxiety, that anxiety is a real thing that people feel and deal with all the time. So I'm not surprised that the New Testament would address it, that Paul would talk about it. That's kind of cool. Paul brings up, he assesses that there's a human reality, that all of us struggle with anxiety, and he's saying basically, in light of Christ, you don't have to be anxious.
Yeah.
Kind of cool that it's trackable and that the Bible addresses it.
Yeah. I think that there's something about anxiety that what you just said, it's probably all of us deal with anxiety. Some, maybe in a lighter way, almost the garden variety of anxiety. There's sort of a range, right? It's there, and then there's some of us that struggle with it where it's panic attacks and really serious, sometimes debilitating anxiety. And you and I both have had some struggles with anxiety. I find that it can happen anywhere. I think that's one of the foundational things that probably a lot of people don't get, is I know for me, it can happen anywhere.
Yep.
And for over stupid stuff, if I'm honest.
Yep. So levels of it. So you could have really low level anxiety where you're kind of nervous about giving a class speech or something, all the way up to really high anxiety that could be totally debilitating and what comes out of nowhere.
Oh, nowhere, right? And if you haven't experienced that, it's almost, you can almost dismiss it, oh, come on, you can control things, but it's no, you just lose control in a minute, and it is panic city, right? And it's stupid. Like, I was in a department store one time, and literally I had a panic attack because they didn't have the brand of underwear I wanted. Okay, like, is that the dumbest thing ever?
That tells me a lot about you, Brad.
Thank you.
You're so concerned about your underwears that you,
But it's so dumb, right?
and it comes out of nowhere.
I couldn't help it.
Yep. And I know, I think people could underestimate that it's just something that happens in your mind, and like kind of just get over it. Just think positive thoughts, or just read a Bible verse and God will give you peace. But the reality is it does start to take on a physical impact. So I had a situation a number of years ago where I got so worked up and so nervous about something. And honestly, I don't even know what it was, but it landed me in the ER because I thought I was having a heart attack. Like, it wasn't just something in my head.
Right.
Because my head and my emotions, my mental, physical, spiritual is all interconnected. I end up in the ER. I thought I'm having a heart attack. And, they gave me medicine to calm me down. Yeah. And it was a panic attack.
Right.
If you've never experienced that, you could think that only happens to weak individuals. The reality is it can happen to any time, to anyone, and it is incredibly real, incredibly scary, and needs to be dealt with in a serious way. It isn't just throw a verse at them like, hey, don't be anxious about anything, Brad.
Right.
Like, that's true.
Yeah.
But it's more complex than that at times. Is that fair?
And I think it piles on too, where like, if I start to get anxious, then I get anxious about being anxious. And
my anxieties have anxieties.
Boom. And you start to have like this physiological even response, physical thing.
Yeah.
And so something you just said, like, I want to just get right in front of this, because I think a lot of times the church has said like, oh, you just need to be more spiritual, read another verse, pray more. It's like, listen, if you need to get medical help, get medical help.
Yep.
And that's not a weakness. If you had a heart condition, no one would think you were weak because you went to the doctor. If you had a breathing condition, no one would go, oh, just read another Bible verse.
Yeah.
They go to the dang doctor, man. Yep. And it's the same thing.
So for me, I know that the Bible is true. And when the Bible speaks truth, the truth of the Bible always lines up with the truth of science.
Oh, that's so
These
good.
things are not in opposition. So scientifically, biologically, physiologically, whatever ology you want to talk about, when it runs up against good theology, it works. Yeah. So there are times that I can look at a verse, like for me, the most helpful verse is in Psalm 56:3. I taught this to my kids from the youngest that I could teach them, and it just says, when I am afraid, I can trust in you, God. That basic truth is so important theologically, but that basic theological truth cannot replace something that's biologically happening in my body.
Right.
It's not just going to make the biology, the physiology, the chemistry inside me change. So I must believe in that truth. I want to believe and teach my kids to believe in the truth that I can trust in God at all times, and I don't need to be afraid. Yeah. And at the same time, I can go to my doctor and get help.
Yep.
And medicine can be useful to help us work through this.
And it's still God's grace working through that medicine to help you, right?
It's God helping us to not be afraid through medicine.
Yeah.
That happens at times. And enough of this stuff with prosperity gospel stuff where people are like, if you just believe more, if you just trust more, if you just prayed harder, you wouldn't have anxiety. Like, these are not people that are living in the real world. The Bible is full of examples of godly people that are struggling with anxiety.
Right.
I mean, the Psalms are Peter, who's the guy in the Psalms? Not the New Testament guys.
That would be
Psalms,
David.
In the Old Testament, David, him just pouring out his heart because he's anxious.
Yeah, and the good news is there is a lot of truth about anxiety that can instruct us and help us in the Bible. I mean, Jesus says in Matthew 6:25, that's a place to go and look. Jesus says, don't be anxious, do not worry. Luke 11:11 is where Jesus says, what father, if his child asked for food, would give him a snake or would give him a rock? It's like, yeah, that's cool. That reminds me that God is a good God who gives gifts. And so that is truth that we can lean into as well. But like, so practically, I mean, what's helped you? So let me say for me, in my anxiety, like the greatest thing that has helped me is calling it out, not hiding it. but even just going, okay, God, right now, I'm really anxious and I need your help.
Yeah, out loud even.
Out loud, verbally. I could be by myself in the car and I would say it. Also telling someone else.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been
struggling.
huge for me, is just telling people that I trust that I struggle or I'm dealing with anxiety in this moment, or I have something coming up, some meeting, some speaking engagement that I'm really nervous about. Good. Hey, Brad, can you pray for me? Yep. Hey, Jenny, my producer, can you pray for me? Can you come into my life and be a part of? Because what's happening in the darkness of my soul, when I bring that into the light, and yeah, there's been times that I've talked to my medical doctor about my anxiety, and he's been able to help me and coach me. So it's bringing this into the light, speaking it out loud, sharing it with other people. I think those are real practical things that help.
Good. So if you're struggling with, anxiety, I hope some of this stuff is meaningful to you, is practical to you. Get help. If you need help, whether it's, spiritual help through a pastor or someone here, but if it's medical help, seek it. Don't be afraid of that. Hey, share your questions with us. Please make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time on Real Talk.